Okay, what we're going to be doing today is showing you, or I'm going to be showing you how to change an inner tie rod. Whilst I'm doing it though, you'll also be able to see how to change a track rod end, because you have to remove the track rod end in order to do the tie rod. So this is the track rod end here, and it screws onto the tie rod just there. It's called an inner tie rod, or a track rod, depends what side of the Atlantic you're on, and we call it a track rod end, but over in the US they call them tie rod ends. So it'll be this bolt here, and in order to undo that on this particular one, it's an 18mm spanner required, but you'll also need some pliers or a smaller spanner just to hold the threaded portion there, because that will try to turn as you undo the nut there. Once that's undone, track rod end drops down, then you've got the lock nut, and the lock nut is just here. Now what you have to do is you have to undo the lock nut to relieve pressure on the track rod end, and to undo it you actually turn it clockwise, because you actually turn it so it moves further up the tie rod. That relieves the pressure here, and then the track rod end will just simply unscrew off the tie rod, and then I'll show you how to replace the inner tie rod. The most important thing with this, to make the job really easy, and it really does make it as easy as changing a wheel, is the right tools. And the biggest one for this is this here, and this is a tie rod removal tool. As you can see, it's a pretty weighty thing. You can actually pick them up relatively cheap from eBay, and I've done the other side, and it did the job brilliantly, although we'll show you a little workaround that I had to use, because I had a bit of problem getting enough grip on the old tie rod. So yeah, so that's the next thing. As you can see, the top part is starting to move now, so I'm going to try and hold that steady. And there, the track rod end comes free. Then you can just swing your hub slightly out of the way. Okay, so like I say, the next stage then is to undo this lock nut. Now, if it's the first time you've gone in here, you're going to find this very difficult to undo, especially if it's been on for 10 years or over 100,000 miles. So what I found was the best thing. I actually put some originally I put some self-locking pliers on it just there. That holds it there, and then basically I grab this, grab the end of the track rod end and turn it counterclockwise, and the self-locking pliers there would grip the lock nut, and then it would allow it to be undone. It's going to be difficult for me to do it right-handed, so yeah, that's the technique that I use. You can also put an extended socket onto here just to give yourself even more leverage, and then the track rod end will undo. Okay, I've just applied the extra leverage, and the lock nut has now come free. Now, the thing you have to be very careful with here, because this determines the angle of turn in or turn out of the steering wheel, of the road wheels rather. When you've broken the seal and you've got it undone, just return it to where it was and just count the number of threads that are showing there Okay, so in this case what have we got? We've got 4 complete threads showing and a little bit extra, because when you put on the new tie rod and then you return the track rod end, you need to have the same number of threads showing, because that will keep your wheels straight. That's really, really important. I can't stress that enough. To be honest though, after you've done something like this, a job like this, you really need to get it professionally, get the wheels professionally aligned using laser equipment, or you can use your home techniques, but yeah, do count the number of threads, because that'll be vital for later. So I'll now undo the lock nut, just enough to relieve the pressure on the track rod end, and then the track rod end will just start turning off. Some people say about counting the number of turns, how many times you turn the track rod end before it comes off. Personally, I don't see the point in that. You need, the important thing is the number of threads showing at the other end, because that determines the length of the track rod end once it's fitted back onto the hob. So I'll just keep turning this, keep turning, and eventually it'll pop off. Now the reason I'm changing the tie rods is I was getting some play, getting a bit of a clunk. I've actually fitted new Melee shock absorbers, Melee heavy duty anti-roll bar links, drop links, sway bar links, whatever you choose to call them, which are these here, just 2 bolts here. So I'd fitted those. The main clunk had actually disappeared by fitting the shock absorber, but like I say, I was still getting a slight clunk on cornering at low speeds where you're doing the steering wheel full lock, and that will be because there's play in the ball joint here, and also on my MOT it was noted that there was play on the inner tie rods. So once I've got this Gator off, I'll show you a little bit more about what's going on. The best way I've found to remove the Gator is just, we've got a couple of things to do here. First thing is I'll just use some long nose pliers. And that just squeezes this clip here. Nut. Now, because I'm going to be fitting brand new tie rods, they actually come with a lock nut, a fresh lock nut, so I'll be using that. You may as well use the nut that comes with the new equipment, that you know it's absolutely made to measure. You can see this is actually turning very easily. I mean, they should be able to turn, but this is turning particularly easily. Now this next bit where I pull off the Gator, it will seem easier than it actually is when you get to it, and I'll explain why in a sec. This is just going to pull off. Little bit of tension. Come on. There we go. And there is the inner tie rod, and as you'll see, I mean, it can't even stay up under the under its own weight, and as a result that's going to give quite a lot of play. God, that sounds exactly like the knock I'm getting when I have the steering on full lock. So yeah, so the next thing then is to unscrew this, and this is where the fun can begin, because basically you've got these very thin, might just be able to see them, very thin flats there. So some people choose to put in a very thin crow's foot, kind of like a side loading spanner, and try and turn it off. I don't like that because it doesn't give a centralised pressure when you're undoing the tie rod, and it can put too much stress, in my opinion, on the rack. So that's why I've bought this tool, in order to sort it out. So I'll get set up with the tool and then show you the next bit. Okay, so like I say, we've got the inner tie rod tool here. Just incidentally to show you, this is the one that I took off the other side. As you can see, it's like a hexagonal shape all the way around this section, whereas the new one I'm going to be putting on and the old one I'm taking off is smooth all around this section, and it just has the inner part there. That inner part is 32mm, but with these removal tools, it doesn't really matter about that section there, because this will grip the entire body. So it's actually the thickness of the entire body you need to take into account when ordering one of these tools. This particular one goes from 35mm to 45mm, I think, although this would only require a 32mm spanner. The outer body is actually 36mm, so the smaller size tie rod tool wouldn't actually be any good for getting over the whole of the body. So yeah, so I'll get the tie rod tool on now. What you may find, especially if it's just borderline, this one's 35mm, say the thing you're taking off is 36mm or whatever, you may find you need to just get some sandpaper, curl it over and put it inside here, and that will just aid grip, and just allow it to turn much easier. So I'll get this placed over the tie rod. And push it all the way on. Okay, so that's securely on, and then you just turn it by hand until you feel it bite. And then all that's left to do is to insert a square drive into here and turn it off. And they are pretty stiff, so what I'm actually going to use is an extension bar just to bring this out a little bit, and then I'll actually be using a cross brace with a 1/2 inch square drive end, once again to keep that nice central pressure on there, and also to keep everything away from the bodywork of the car. Okay, so I'm set up now, and all I'm going to do is just keep turning. You heard it go there. Just keep turning. There we go. You do get quite a bit of resistance on these because, you know, these have been on for years and years, plus they also use thread locker to hold them in place, hold the tie rods in place, so it's going to take quite a few turns to get it out. I've got a feeling this is definitely original. There we go. And that's it. So one very dangly tie rod removed, and then you've got this area here. So basically I'll be cleaning out all the thread in here because it's just bits of gunk and old thread lock. This collar removed, so just give that a good clean up. And then, because your rack needs to be scrupulously clean, I'll be running a cloth over there. I mean, it looks pretty good. It looks like the Gator's been doing its job quite nicely over the years, but I'll still clean that up, just just to give it a final go, because to be honest this is a job that you're not really going to be doing very often. Hopefully maybe once in the life of your car, something like that, twice if you're unlucky. So yeah, I'll get that cleaned up, and then it'll just be a question of putting the plastic collar back on and screwing the new tie rod in. Okay, just before I go on to the next bit, what I thought I'd just do is just give you a little talk through of a couple of things that you'll come across. So like I say, with the Gator, I mean, what you saw was me basically undoing this clip that was holding it on here. What you didn't see was how I took the clip off here. On the old one, which had been, on the other side, when that had been changed, they just used a cable tie, whereas this one, this is why I think this is the original, this was actually held on by a proper metal clip, and the access, you have to basically take off the under tray from the car. The access to get to that clip is an absolute nightmare. Luckily I used my Dremel, and I actually used that cutting disc, but I had to have the Dremel on a flexi hose in order to get the access to it, and all I did then was just cut through the clip, and that then allowed the Gator to come off. Now when I put the Gator back on, I'll actually just be skewering it with a cable tie, because to be honest they're not under that much pressure once they're on, so a cable tie going around that section there, as long as it's a decent quality thick cable tie, that will give it all the protection that it needs. Then on the tie rods, okay, let's give you a little bit of tie rod excitement. Here we go. So what we've got here, this is the one that I've removed from the passenger side, and as you can see, it has a different pattern to it just there. So there's a different pattern. That's why I think that one is actually fairly new, because it actually takes quite a bit of effort to move it. I can move it, but it actually takes quite a bit of effort, whereas with this one, as you can see, this can't even hold its own weight. This is the one from the passenger side. The reason why I think this is the original one is because, as you can see, the pattern is different, and the new one that I've bought is made by Lemforder, who actually make the tie rods for Volvo. So and you can see they're exactly the same there, same length thread, whereas this one, I think this is a bit of a cheapo nasty one, even though it's actually relatively new. You don't get anywhere near as much thread to be holding it on in place, so that's why, for the sake of £22, I've actually changed this one out. So I've actually got a Lemforder spec one on the other side, and this is the one that I'm going to be putting onto this side, and you'll see the difference where you can see there just how much of the ball in the ball joint you can see, and this is all still, this is brand new obviously, and this doesn't move. You actually can't move this, you can't break it by hand, let alone it go around like this. So you can see now why you'd be getting a clunking from your tie rod. So yeah, so I'm going to put some thread lock onto this, clean up the rack as I showed you, and then I'll be using the tie rod tool again to screw it back on. Right, so we're going to be putting everything back together now. So I've given the rack a good clean. I mean, it didn't really need that much, because the Gator has really done a cracking job, considering that's done 170,000 miles. I mean, it's just so shiny. It was just little bits of dust really, but you may as well clean the dust off, because the steering rack seals can be quite sensitive. And then, so all I've done then is just clean off this end cap. I'm going to put that back on. You can't get it the wrong way around, it won't go on the wrong way, so that just fits there. And then this is the new tie rod, which I've caked in blue thread lock. I suppose I really should be using red thread lock, but because this one, it's original spec, nice long thread, decent amount of medium strength thread lock, as long as it's torqued up right, really this should be holding in quite nicely. So you just set it off, screwing it in, just keep it nice and central. Don't want any cross threads on this, don't want any cross threads on anything, but especially not this. You just keep turning, and then it'll be time for the tie rod tool, so I'll finish the job with that. Again, tie rod tool goes in until it's all the way in, and you just keep turning until it starts gripping. Just clean off, because the thread lock's now squished out all around the outside. Just clean off the thread lock, make all that nice and clean. Then all I'll do now is I'll put the tie rod tool back on with the extension bar, only this time to finish the job just use a torque wrench. It's going to be torqued up to 100 Newton meters, and that should then be job done. Right, I'll just torque it up now. As it is, to do this I had to use a little bit of really rough sandpaper in there just to give it extra grip. So I'll be cleaning this off, cleaning the dust off. Okay, we're at the last stage now, so all I'm going to be doing is sliding the Gator back all the way on, and then once it's on I'm actually going to be securing it with a cable tie this time, which will sit quite nicely in that gap there. It's a good thick high strength one, and to be honest that will do the job quite nicely and be a lot easier to fit than a metal clip because the access is so limited down there. So yeah, I'll put this back on and then I'll just show you just finally for doing the tripod. Then we'll just put the Gator clip on. Just release that there. That's nice and secure. Like I say, the new tie rod came with its own lock nut, so why not use the one that it came with. And remember what I was saying about making sure the same number of threads are exposed at the back, so I'm going to be looking to have it so there was 4 and a bit threads exposed there, and then I'll just screw on the track rod end, put the track rod end back in here, tighten it up. It's basically a reversal of the removal that you saw earlier, and that is job done. And that's how you do an inner tie rod.